You're hanging out after hours with Matt Anderson, presented by Inside the Gamecocks.
Good evening, everybody. I'm so excited for this episode tonight. I have one of my all-time best friends and one of the best basketball coaches in the state of South Carolina on the show tonight. Phil Deter is the head coach at Cardinal Newman. Recently minted his third state championship. Heck of an accomplishment, especially when you think about the changing landscape, not just in college basketball, but also at the high school level. So Phil has done a great job of maneuvering through that and bringing continued success to Cardinal Newman. And that's a SCISA league, and SCISA is ridiculously competitive. And Phil can talk about that here in a little bit. But Phil, I want you to know I got my Dr. Pepper here. Phil is a big Dr. Pepper fan who recently kicked the habit. And Phil, how long's it been now since you've had a Dr. Pepper?
About a year. About this time, we lost in the state championship last year and decided to give it up. Try to make some new lifestyle changes, and I guess one of them was sodas. And so even though I still got the sign at the school where you can buy a special Dieter Dog special with a Dr. Pepper, I no longer drink them. So I guess it's water and Celsius now for me.
Well, you're a better man than me because this is a late night Gamecock show. So sometimes we have some adult beverages, but sometimes we just drink a Dr. Pepper. And, you know, I got my water here as well. So maybe I'll just try to abstain from Dr. Pepper in your honor tonight. But Phil, man, goodness gracious. I mean, 3 state championships. Like, let's talk about your high school coaching career and how have you been so successful?
Well, you know, I don't think if you would have asked me coming out of college after 5.5 years in 2012 of trying to figure out what I was going to do, where 12 years later I'd sit in front of you and say, oh, yeah, you're going to be a teacher and work in a school and, you know, drive buses or do whatever, I would have never told you that. Not with the type of student I was or even strive to be. But as I got closer to trying to figure things out, I was just lucky to have good people in my life. A guy like David Ross, who played at Carolina, was the head coach of Cardinal Newman at the time, back when I graduated. And he offered me a part-time, job at just coaching middle school for a couple $100. And, you know, I could work it into my work schedule at the time. And so I did it. And, I was fortunate enough to, jump in right with him. And yeah, I coached the little guys, but then would stick around and help him out with the varsity group. And we were good enough and actually won a state title that year with Cardinal Newman back in 2013. And he kind of paved the way for me. I mean, he runs a law firm, busy guy, obviously was a great basketball player and a tremendous coach. So he was kind of the one that springboarded me to even get a job at Cardinal Newman, and he went to bat for me and got me a part-time sub job, and I kind of just stuck around from there. And they couldn't tell me no, and I always asked things to do, so I kind of grew from there. And here I am now as the assistant athletic director. Work alongside a guy, Will Udy, who's been there now 16, 17 years as a boys soccer coach who's won a ton of state championships. Teams always finish near the top 25 in the country, so I've gotten to learn from him. But there's a lot of great people in the last 12 years that have kind of molded me. But it started with David Ross, and now he coaches at the rival Hammond, so it's always fun at least twice a year to go play him. And then this year we had to play them in the semifinals, and we ended up obviously winning. But he kind of gave me that start, and so I'll be ever thankful for him just to take a chance on me. But I've learned from a lot of great people along the way. So that's kind of how things fall in life usually. And I don't take that for granted, but also try to instill that in our kids, that it's about building relationships and just finding people that you trust and people you can call when you need them. And, more than anything, that will help you along the way.
Well, it's funny because I haven't spoken to David in a number of years, but I remember when David was a freshman in South Carolina, and I was, fortunate enough to be a ball boy and be around the team at that time. And Hagen Rouse introduced me to David and said, "Hey, Matt, count how many threes he makes in a row. And I think I lost count at like 17. And it was the easiest rebounding I've ever done in my entire life. So, yeah, David Ross, a great Gamecock and a great guy. But, Phil, like, you've done this now, like you said, for a number of years. And you have 21 kids that have gone on to play college basketball. That's such a testament to you. And, one of those guys was Chico Carter, who, now is at DePaul and he's doing big things and it's really fun to watch him. But, you had a front row seat to Frank Martin in South Carolina. You've seen, the differences in, the recruiting for South Carolina and Clemson for your guys. But, if you can for a little bit, what was it like to coach a kid like Chico or a kid like Beetle who's now playing Power 5? And then, you've coached a number of kids that are having great success in college. Like, what's the makeup of those kind of kids?
Well, I think, the one thing that I put my staff together, and my assistant coach, James Abrams, who played at Eau Claire back in the day for George Klemp and Jermaine O'Neal and all those guys. So I went out and convinced them to want to coach just kind of by happenstance. And then I kind of have a staff around me too of about eight or nine other guys that are helping me. But when we started, our number one thing was we want kids to be able to have a chance in our program to realize their dreams. And a lot of them, every kid wants to go play college basketball, but what does that look like, right? So, not every kid is a Chico Carter Jr., who's that type of high school player that just refuses to lose and, shoots the ball so well, can run the point, can do different things, and really taught himself, how to be an athlete and worked extremely hard at his craft to even get that opportunity first at Murray State. But, or not every kid's as gifted as Josh Beadle is just natural talent. When I saw him as an eighth grader, he did things that no other kid could do even at that age. And, so, yeah, those kids are they easy to coach? I wouldn't say it's easy, but, at the same time, like they have that drive to win too. And so we've been fortunate enough to have kids like that, going back to when D. Ross was the coach, a kid like Austin Ajukla or a John Reagan who helped at Carolina for a while, went to Carolina as a walk-on, guys like Christian Jones and Brandon Martin, Frank's son, and Winston Andrews, and guys that really kind of built the beginning of that, our program that worked hard. And now they finish their college career. Some of them are playing overseas, some of them are helping coach at different levels. A couple of them are now college coaches. So you're lucky to have kids that wanted to accomplish that goal, but the two, you got to give them the chance, and you just got to put a development program for them and convince them, hey, if you work hard enough at this, there will be a spot for you. It may not be the Power 5, it may not be a Division I, a mid-major, it may not even be Division II or NAIA Division III, but there may be a spot out there for you if you want to take it. And it's everything from preferred walk-ons to guys that have taken NAIA scholarships or, gone to the Division II level and moved up to Division I. So there's plenty of opportunities out there, and it's just kind of, all right, well, how do you get there? And it starts with the classroom work, the grades. The more better grades you have, the more money you possibly can get, because outside of Division I, everything else, you got to have academic money. So that's where it really starts. And even though Division IIs have scholarships they could split, it's tough. And you talk about the landscape today, it's totally different, especially with the transfer portal. And it really stinks for high school kids because college coaches, I get it. They want guys that are proven or at least have that experience or have that, year or two in the weight room, or at least have done something at the college level, because at the end of the day, they get paid based on wins. And I get it. High school kids coming into your program, unless they're a top 100 kid or McDonald's All-American or whatever, probably aren't going to have that immediate impact. It's going to take some building, but you got to win now. And so I understand that the transfer portal is important. And it's even harder for college guys, our college guys, to want to go to high school coaches and find those kids that they normally maybe would have taken a chance on. So it just makes it that much more competitive. And I think you're seeing that across the board, and hopefully a little bit will phase out as we get some of these 6-year seniors kind of done, back from a few years ago with the COVID stuff.
That has to be the hardest part.
Oh,
I think it
100%.
has to be the hardest part, Phil. Like when you have these 6-year kids, maybe even 7th year. I mean, there's a kid at Miami that's playing his 9th year of college football coming up. And it's the same thing that happens when you think about the NBA. You know, the reason that players can't go to the league out of high school isn't about the NBA. It's all about the collective bargaining agreement and the veterans that don't want to give up their spot. Maybe it's like 11 or 12 man on the bench. They don't want these high school kids coming in to get developed. And I think you're seeing that in college too. So, you know, Phil, one of the questions I had for you today is just, you know, you talked about the advice you give to high school kids that want to go play in college, and, you know, the fact that grades are important. And I think that's amazing that Cardinal Newman gives them the opportunity, if they take advantage of it, to go to any college they want to, because they're likely going to have the grades. But, you know, like a kid like Gigi Jackson, you know, what is that like for him to go from a, you know, theoretical high school junior to skipping his senior year, going to South Carolina, and then talk about what you think impacted South Carolina last year with that decision from Gigi, because you're never going to turn down a Gigi.
No, I mean, I mean, if you turn down a Gigi, you should probably be fired. You know, at the end of the day, I mean, Gigi was a great kid. And he came from a good family, and he, you know, truly developed into one of the top players in the country, you know, for his age level. But I think the hard part is you go from playing a high school season, you know, which a lot of programs in South Carolina, especially in Columbia, are really competitive, and Ridgeview is one of those. So he at least came from that, where you're expected to work year round, and you're expected to put in the time and effort on and off the court. You know, but it is a different game. And you're talking about a young teenage kid going into a locker room with guys that have been doing this. And it's a first-year head coach and a first-year staff. Yeah, there's going to be problems. You know, were some of them fixable? Sure, probably. You know, but at the end of the day, you're banking on his talent and what he could be, even though you know he doesn't have that kind of time. So, yeah, I mean, I think some of the initial, you know, problems might have been just adjusting to the schedule, adjusting to freedom, adjusting to, you know, whether it was, you know, now with NIL money you're making, how do you adjust to that as a kid? And that can be tough. And you're talking about veteran leadership and things like that. And again, with a first year coach trying to build and put his stamp on a program, you're not necessarily going to have some of that. So I think that might have been some of the issues there, but you can see, you know, Coach Paris in his second year has already got, you know, he's trying to instill what he wants. And if, you know, you could go into the future and say, hey, we get a Gigi Jackson, you know, in Paris's year 3 or 4, you might see a little bit different results. But because it was year 1, I think that probably had the biggest impact on it.
Yeah, I think so too. And Phil, I got a couple more questions. I know that you have a hard stop here coming up. Phil is actually having to go talk to some AAU coaches and some families and figure out where his kids are going to play this summer. So we got a hard stop. But Phil, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with you. And then, you know, just shoot me a 5-minute notice or something if you got to run.
Yeah, we'll be all right. They can hang out for a second.
All right, we're going to have a word from our sponsors.
Hey everyone, this is John Weiss Jr., and I'm with the House of Hope of the PD, a faith-based ministry focused on homelessness in men, women, and children. We are so excited for the Evening of Hope, Jeff Foxworthy event on March 11th at the Florence Center. For general admissions tickets, please visit Ticketmaster. And if you're interested in table or other sponsorship opportunities, please contact me directly at 843-667-9000. Thank you so much for your support. God bless.
Chicken cock originated in Kentucky, like so many other bourbons. And so the resurrection of it, you know, Paris, Kentucky, that's the county seat of Bourbon County. So much of this whiskey was being made in that Bourbon County, put on ships and barges and shipped down to Ohio, down to Mississippi, and got to New Orleans, where it got distributed all over the world. And people kept saying, well, hey, I want some more of that whiskey from Bourbon County. And so that's how bourbon whiskey got its name. And chicken cock originated actually in Paris, Kentucky, which is today Bourbon County.
So real quick, just word from our sponsors. If you have the opportunity to come to Florence, South Carolina, obviously where I live, come out to that Jeff Foxworthy event. It's a great opportunity for you to help raise money for the House of Hope that combats homelessness in the PD area. And Jeff Foxworthy is a huge advocate for homelessness in the Atlanta, Georgia area. But make sure you do that. And Phil, next time we enjoy, well, actually, we should get some Chicken Cock whiskey to celebrate your state championship. I'll send a call to Chicken Cock and see what we can do there. But Phil, really quick, continuing on Gigi, really quickly here. Michael Lynn in the chat box has a good point. And he said the Gigi's success is great for recruiting for South Carolina. Maybe you can walk us through, the challenges that South Carolina has had recruiting this state and how Gigi can help going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think, anything that Gigi's doing, what you're seeing now at the next level in the NBA is going to help South Carolina. One, it's going to tell recruits that, hey, you can stay home. Not only can you make, good NIL money and kind of jumpstart there, but you're on a platform playing in the SEC in a basketball talented conference, and there's a staff in place here that could develop you to even get drafted and to sign that next deal. And not only that, but then be prepared to actually get into the league. And so it's, everything that he does now is going to only help. I think some of the challenges for South Carolina in general is just, if you look at it and you were to map out, rank 1 through, 14 SEC schools, South Carolina pretty much in everything in basketball is going to probably be at the bottom. And it's kind of by default, right? It's kind of by where you're at in the country. You can drive to, Tobacco Road. The Florida schools are going to pull some of that talent. Then, obviously your national type kids are going to be recruited by every blue blood in the country. And so to win those recruiting battles, it's tough. And especially now with money being involved with NIL, you got to step up and you got to have the same pockets that some of these guys do that obviously are going to get offered. And so for a kid, if you're really, really good at basketball and you want to go be a professional basketball player, yeah, you're probably going to look first at some other places. But the success of Gigi, the success of some of those guys in the Frank era of getting to the next level and even now still making money for playing professional basketball is only going to help. And I think it shows that kids can stay home and the coaches are going to make an effort. And hopefully it does help out here in the future.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I don't think it's ever a bad thing when you have a player that, played at your university that's now got a second contract in the NBA. That's a pretty big deal. So, Phil, you were a student manager during the Darren Horn era at South Carolina. So you got to see a pretty good player in Devin Downey for a little bit. And there were good players on those teams. But, can you talk about the difference in what you're seeing with South Carolina right now versus that era? And then obviously we had the Frank Martin run to the Final Four, which was fantastic. And, this can be like a 3-part question and, keep up with me and I'll remind you if you miss a little bit. But you say you go from Darren Horn to Frank Martin and now you have Lamont Paris. But the Final Four is the biggest accomplishment in, men's basketball history for sure. Can you talk about what the differences you've seen between those 3 eras and, what the future holds?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of my work as a manager came right at the end of Horn's era. So I was kind of trying to get started there right when Dominique Archie went down in Charleston. That was kind of the year before that I had kind of made, at least made a move to even become a manager. But I remember watching that season and losing a player like that early, that was that important. And it really hurt. So I think, as it progressed with Coach Horn, it wasn't that he knew what to do to be successful. I don't think that was the problem. I think a lot of it just stemmed from, at the time, you made a commitment to, hey, let's go out and get South Carolina kids or Southeast regional kids. And quite frankly, they just weren't that good. And you're going up against the Kentucky teams of those days and the Florida teams that are coming off, major success. It's hard. And, I think at the end of the day, there's probably some things that Coach Orm could have done better. Probably not probably, definitely some things that he could have done better relationships-wise, kind of around the school. But at the end of the day in college athletics, when it starts going south and it goes south really fast, it's going to be tough because you're not going to win recruiting battles. You're not going to win transfers. You're not going to win, a lot of different things. And guys are going to be down. The fans will be down. It's going to be a tough ride. And it was. My last year, we were awful. And it was not fun to watch a 2,000 person arena. So when you go now, my encouragement to Gamecock fans is like, just enjoy being around 15,000 people, or you go to the girls games and, it's 15 to 18,000 every night. Enjoy that. Cause I've seen where it's not very good and kind of been a part of it. In the Frank era, I think he came in and Frank's a lightning rod. And the way he coaches is not probably a welcoming style day in and day out. When you're talking about the current, landscape of basketball, but the one thing that I always love about Frank, one is he's a better human being than he is a basketball coach for starters. But then two, the guys that played for him, that talk about him, love that guy. And they will go to the ends of the world. So that's what you want to see from former players. And obviously that Final Four run, being able to go to the Garden and see your team advance to the Final Four is probably one of the greatest memories outside of, obviously, wedding, kids' births, things like that. But sports memories that I'll ever have for sure. But then, going into Coach Paris, what you see now is you see a team that just enjoys playing together. And you see a staff that's having fun doing what they're doing. Sure, there's some things that probably need to be corrected, but I remember you guys a couple of weeks ago talking about just enjoy the run. And that's as true as it can be. Enjoy it. Enjoy going to those games and watching the games on TV that matter. And it's awesome to see and enjoy being in the top 25 because that doesn't happen often either.
Yeah, the Gamecocks have only been to, I think, 9 NCAA tournaments in their entire history. And to see Colonial Life Arena as buzzing as it has been, pretty much since the Kentucky game, it's what I always encourage people to do. And, Phil's going to laugh when I say this because I'm not the biggest LeBron James guy in the world. But at the same time, like, appreciate greatness. Like, I remember getting so mad about, different NBA players back in the day, like, oh, I had my favorite, but like this doesn't happen every day. And Gamecocks can lose by 40 against Auburn, but Phil, you've coached games where your team gets blasted and it's not the end of the world.
Oh shoot, we won a state title this year, and I think we lost 14 or 15 games, something like that. I mean, yeah, it's how it goes. And our first game the last 2 years has been against Oak Hill. So it is what it is. I mean, at the college level, yeah, you'd probably prefer not to see a 40-point loss, but Auburn at home and different things like that. I mean, a team could get hot, you just don't have it. So, I don't think that should discourage anybody because at the end of the day, the tournament, whether it's the SEC tournament or the NCAA tournament, is on a neutral floor. And none of that home stuff is going to matter. And it's really about, okay, how can you guard? How do you rebound? Can you limit the other team's possessions? Can you play your pace that you want to play at? And then ultimately it comes down to you have guys that can make plays and make shots. And, if you look at our team, we have that. And does it need to be a little more consistent? Sure. But that's the thing that should excite you is like, hey, we got a team that can get onto a neutral floor and play with anybody in the country. And they've already showed that. And, so I think that's the exciting piece, but enjoy the road to get there too. Like it's not, don't take it for granted because it is tough to do. But what they're doing is awesome.
Yeah, it's funny. And Phil, I actually want to get your take on this because on thebigspur.com, there's been a ton of conversation and, you don't have every Gamecock fan in the world on the Big Spur. So like you get the most passionate, the fanatical, the people that want to post and talk about stuff. And, hopefully they don't kick their dog at the end of the night. But, have you ever been a part of a game where you felt like your team lost that game, like as like a hangover? because I don't think the Gamecocks lost to LSU because Auburn beat them twice. Like, they had a 17-point lead. Like, they didn't lose that game because Auburn beat them twice. Has that ever happened to you where you get called up twice?
I would say in high school that can happen easier than it could at the college level, just because you're dealing with, immature kids at times that just don't know how to either take criticism or take coaching, or they're hearing different things from it, wherever, they got going on at home or whatever, so it is a little bit different. So I would say, yeah, could one loss affect another one at the high school level? Sure. At the college level, it's a little harder. I mean, you kind of wipe it, and you're going in with, game plans and film and all the prep, where, the high school level isn't, the good coaches are doing some of that, but it's hard to do it at that level because you only get a couple of, maybe 2 hours with those kids in practice, if that. And they got a lot of other things going on during the day where, again, yes, college students still got to go to class, but at the same time, they're dumping in, triple the amount of hours between those games to prepare for it. So I think it's a little easier. I definitely wouldn't classify that. I mean, I think you watch that LSU game, there's two plays specifically in my mind that would say, hey, you make the right fundamental play and you probably win the game. And it was two lob passes for dunks that, okay, yeah, they would look great, but make the simple play and make the easy play. And that's what our team usually does. So it was tough to see some of that, but obviously down the stretch, you got to be able to close it out too.
Yeah, Phil. I mean, there are a million moments in games that I'm sure the coach in you is just screaming at, and it's not just South Carolina. Whatever game you're watching, you're saying, "What are you doing? Like, just do what we practiced, do what we talked about." And it's always difficult. But man, Gamecocks are on a little bit of a run now. They still have a chance in the SEC regular season championship. I think that as long as the Gamecocks continue to enjoy this run, play for each other, it's a lot of fun to watch. So, Phil, I really appreciate your time tonight. If you're game, I'd love to get you on the show again. I know that you have thoughts outside of basketball. I mean, you can talk about football. Heck, we might have like a summer where we talk about the League of Gamecocks. That's the hat that Phil has on. He's in my fantasy football league. So we'll do something like that. But Phil, thank you so much for your time. Go get those little girls down and get ready to drive the bus at 5 a.m. tomorrow. The life of a high school basketball coach, it's a thankless job, and Phil is amazing at it.
It's lucky when you wake up that early that you got plenty of podcasts to listen to, this being one of them. So usually I don't catch it the day of, but I'm always tuning in at some point to make sure I got my facts straight heading into the next game. So it's been cool to see you do what you do and do what you love. And at the end of the day, I think that's the best part. And a lot of coaches, across the state, that's what they do, what they love. And, so it's cool to see you do that too. So appreciate you having me on, man. And enjoy the rest of the show. And I'm sure I'll catch it a couple of days later.
That sounds good, Phil. We'll talk, man. Bye.
All right, dude.
All right, so with that, we're going to take another break here, and then when we come back, we're going to talk a lot about the Gamecocks and the NCAA tournament. So thank you guys for sticking with me, and enjoy this word from our sponsors.
I said, oh, Lord Jesus, it's a fire. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Emergencies and accidents happen. When you're in the middle of a fire or water event, all you want is for things to return to normal as soon as possible. Resto Pros of the Midlands is with you. RestoProsMidlandsSC.com. Open 24/7 when you need them. Quality that is guaranteed.
Down here in the South, we don't always see eye to eye. While our taste in college football teams, or what sauce, if any, goes best on a rack of ribs, or what to mix with our Dixie vodka might be up for debate, we can all agree there's nothing better than a Southern tailgate. And like our favorite college teams, our ingredients come from small towns and big cities. They're grown in Southern soil, are crafted by Southern hands, and proudly represent the South in our backyard and beyond. So raise a glass of Dixie Southern Vodka to celebrate being made in America and raised in the South.
Oh, man, the building is on fire.
During and after natural disasters or accidents, there can be a heavy loss to property. Resto Pros of the Midlands is here to help. Open 24/7. Call them when you need them. 803-493-0170. Resto Pros Midlands SC.com. Quality that is guaranteed.
Welcome back, everybody. Want to thank Phil so much for hopping on the show. That's one of the best basketball minds that I've ever been around. I learned something from him every single day, and I've wanted to get him on the show for a while now, but obviously being a state championship level coach, the basketball season had to end to get Phil on here. But Phil is a great guest, and I really appreciate him taking the time. I'm kind of checking up on the chat box here. A lot of stuff going on. I think that Eli Ellis, Michael Lynn asked about Eli Ellis. He's really firm. I don't think you have to worry about anything with him. There's some commentary going on about the LSU game and things that the Gamecocks could have done a little bit differently. Absolutely. Yeah. 23-4 looks better than 22-5, but the Gamecocks are still in a really good spot. And I made some jokes talking with folks because I do bracketology. I love it. I think I understand it. I kind of have a knack for it. And I have a knack for it because I've done it for 15 years. That's why. But the Gamecocks have been in a great spot. I'm very thankful that the Gamecocks did win at Ole Miss. And it's one of those situations that I've talked about this season for the Gamecocks where the second go around, I don't think the Gamecocks have lost a game so far this season. The second time they play a team. So Gamecocks did it again against Ole Miss. Now they have Texas A&M, Florida, Tennessee, and Mississippi State to close out the season. Texas A&M, the Gamecocks haven't played yet. Florida, they haven't played yet. But they have played Tennessee and Mississippi State, and they beat both of them. The Tennessee game's at home. The Mississippi State game's on the road. Looking at it, Texas A&M on the road Wednesday night is a quad 1 game. You have Florida at home on Saturday. That's a quad 2 game. And then you have 2 of what's called quad 1A games, like in the top half of quad 1, with Tennessee at home on Wednesday, March 6th, and then on the road to finish out the regular season Saturday, March 9th at Mississippi State. I think that the Gamecocks, I've been saying it pretty much since they beat Tennessee, that I think the Gamecocks are really just playing for seeding at this point. When you look at the Gamecock resume, if you look at the computer numbers, it's not as great. But at the same time, we've talked about the computer numbers all season long, and they're never going to reward the Gamecocks for a multitude of reasons. One, when you look at KenPom especially, there's still some preseason bias in there. Most of that's washed out, but there's probably 10% preseason bias that still exists at KenPom. But what also hurts the Gamecocks is when you look at the net, Charleston Southern, which, I got a lot of love in my heart for Charleston Southern, but beating them by like 6 points is not going to move the needle when every game is counted the same in the net rating system. So if the Gamecocks have won that game by 35 or 40 points, it's not unrealistic to think that the Gamecocks could be 10 or 15 points better in the net rating system. That's really just how crazy sometimes this system is. I think that the net is actually a good metric tool because I think the Gamecocks should have beat Charleston Southern by 30, 35, 40 points. But they didn't, and that counts. That matters. Again, that matters. The Gamecocks were not ready to beat Charleston Southern by that, and so the net rating is impacted by it. Really quick here, somebody asked a question about Deba. Yeah, Deba's taking, I think he's taking a red shirt right now. I don't know if it's actually going to be a medical red shirt because he already had one of those. I'm sure they'll apply for it. I don't know if he still has basketball in his future plans. I know the Gamecocks would be really excited to have him back next year because he is kind of like a Swiss Army knife and he has a lot of college basketball experience. But I just don't know if his athleticism has ever returned since that injury. Looking at this, Billy says what's really insane is all these sportscasters talking about Kentucky when we just plain beat them. Yeah, I mean, Kentucky is a poster child for college basketball, but it's well deserved. And Kentucky, and the reason that win was so big for South Carolina is Kentucky probably has the most NBA players, whether it's next year or a couple years down the road, of any team in the country. So it was a very big win for South Carolina, and Kentucky's still working through a lot of their growing pains, but Kentucky's going to be a good team in March, I think. That's just my opinion. Yeah, I know they lost to St. Peter's like 2 years ago or something like that, or maybe it was last year. No, it was definitely 2 years ago. But, yeah, Kentucky's a good team. The SEC is a good conference. The SEC, I think, is probably one of the top 2-3 best conferences in the country. I think the Big 12 is number one, and then you can have all the arguments you want about the Big East and the SEC. But getting back to South Carolina and what it looks like for South Carolina in regards to the NCAA tournament, South Carolina, according to BartTorvik.com, and I think he updates this thing, either hourly or daily or something like that. But the Gamecocks now sit at 5-3 4-3 in quad 1 games, 5-0 in quad 2 games, for a combined 9-3 in quad 1 and quad 2 opportunities, and 4-2 right now in quad 3 and 9-0 in quad 4. But the key metric that I always go back to when I have this conversation is looking at the KPI and the strength of record. So the KPI for South Carolina is 20th in the country, and the strength of record is 13th in the country. And remember, KPI is just taking a bunch of different metrics that actually happen in a course of a basketball game and rating them across every team in the country. And the strength of record is, you get a +1 for the best possible outcome and a -1 for the worst possible outcome based on the games that you play. So for South Carolina to be an average of 16.5 on the actual resume metrics, and then looking at them being 53rd in BPI and KenPom, and then I guess they're 48th in the net, that's an average of 53, give or take. So the Gamecocks are kind of walking that line for seeding in the NCAA tournament, where it's going to be somewhere between 16.5 and 53 divided by 4. So let's do that math really quick. I'm not super great at doing math on the fly, even though my wife thinks I am, but I'm really not that good at it. All right, so right now the Gamecocks are probably looking at somewhere in that 8 seed range if you just take the computer metrics and the resume metrics. I think that at the end of the day, the selection committee is going to lean more on the resume metrics and not the computer, because South Carolina does have that 9-3 record in quad 1 and quad 2 games. And one of their quad 2 or quad 3 losses, I should say, is a 1-point loss at home and then a 5-point loss to Georgia at home. So Gamecocks are still sitting pretty. I think the Gamecocks will likely be, if the season ended right now, somewhere in that 5 to 7 seed line. I think they're probably going to be a 6 seed if I was doing a bracket right now, just because the Gamecocks have such a good resume. But the big thing for the Gamecocks right now is not just what NCAA tournament seed they're going to be, but also where they're going to finish up in the SEC. And right now, the Gamecocks are 10-4 overall in the conference. They are a full game back of Tennessee and Alabama. They do play Tennessee again, and they're tied with Auburn at 10-4. Auburn has a tiebreaker because Auburn beat South Carolina by 40, like we talked about earlier. But the Gamecocks do have a tiebreaker over Kentucky, who's sitting at 9-5, and they have an opportunity to play Florida to have a tiebreaker against them as well. I think that winning the SEC is going to come down to what Alabama does and if South Carolina can win out. If South Carolina wins out, there's no way that they're not going to be the SEC regular season champion as long as Alabama drops one more game, because they'll have that head-to-head against Tennessee. But I think the bigger thing for South Carolina is it's great to get trophies. And even if they tie for the SEC regular season, they're going to get a trophy. South Carolina's trophy case is kind of lacking at this point in time. But I think the bigger thing for South Carolina is to make sure that they stay a top 4 seed in the SEC tournament, so they get a little bit of extra rest. They get to play another quad 1 opportunity when they take the court on, I guess it would be Friday at the SEC, or maybe it'd be Saturday. Yeah, it'd be Friday. I don't know. It'd be Friday or Saturday, but they're going to have a good opportunity to have another scalp on their resume, and then you're just really playing for seeding. So South Carolina has a great opportunity for that. Yeah, and Phil, the greatest producer in the game, sent me a private chat and said a double bye would be great in the SEC. That's exactly what the Gamecocks are looking for. Obviously, let's go try and win an SEC regular season championship, but let's stay in the double bye range for the SEC tournament. Let's see here. I'm going back to the chat box. Michael says he doesn't want to see Kentucky in the tournament. Yep, I agree. When I think about, an SC Scout guy says, when I think about the success of this year's team, yeah, a lot of these guys are only going to be here for one more year. So, but it's still a great year, and the Gamecocks have an opportunity to do something special. Michael says, I think the Gamecocks, I think if they go 3-1 the next 4, will be a 5 seed. Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. 2 more quad 1 and quad 2 wins would be great. Yeah, Michael, agree. Billy says with win 3 and win at least 1 in the SEC, I think they'll put them at a 5 seed. The thing that I always try and remind everybody about is the NCAA tournament. If you're a 4 seed, that means you're one of the top 16 best teams in the country according to regular season resume. Well, regular season and conference tournament. If you're a 5 seed, you're one of the top 20 teams in the country. A 6 seed, top 24. 7 seed, top 28. That's where the Gamecocks kind of sit right now. And if I really wanted to make the argument, and I might do it on the Big Spur, but the Gamecocks realistically have an opportunity to say they have one of the best 14 to 19 resumes in the country. So if you look at that, that's somewhere between, a 4 seed and a 5 seed. That's probably where the Gamecocks are. I think that the computer metrics, whether you like them or not, could hinder the Gamecocks' chances of, getting that high without some more wins on the resume. But the Gamecocks are 9-3 in quad 1 and quad 2, and that's all the games they have left. So you're talking about a 75% win percentage, and they got 4 games left. So there's nothing to say the Gamecocks can't win 3 out of these next 4 games, because that's what they've done all season long. So exactly what Phil said earlier, enjoy the ride. This is so much fun to cover this, to be a part of it, to watch them play, and the way that the Gamecocks are winning, and just, it's almost like a win anyway type mentality battle, like the Gamecock baseball team had those many years, and when they were running through Omaha and setting NCAA tournament consecutive win records. It's a lot of fun to be a part of. So just win. I mean, like Al Davis said, just win, and everything else is going to take care of itself. And once you get to the NCAA tournament, it's a new season. And the Gamecocks were a 7 seed with Frank Martin back in 2017, went all the way to the Final Four. It's hard to win in March. So regardless of what happens in March, the Gamecocks have had just a phenomenal season, and something Lamont's going to build upon. And Mike Morgan has said this on the Inside the Gamecocks show. A lot of people have said this in the national media. The Gamecocks are not going to be a team that anybody wants to see matched up against them in round 1, round 2, round 3, Elite 8 if they get that far, Final Four if they get that far, national championship, all the above. The Gamecocks are really tried and true in what they want to do and how they're going to do it. And there's not a team in the country that I think that can dictate their style of basketball over South Carolina on a neutral court, other than maybe Connecticut, maybe Purdue, definitely Houston. There are probably like 6 or 7 teams in the country that I think can win a national title. I don't know if the Gamecocks are one, but just like Michael just said in the chat box, defense wins in March, and the Gamecocks are playing at, let me pull it up really quick for you. So the Gamecocks have a top 50 defense in the country, 45th overall. They have a top 62 offense. You look at the SEC, which I just said for my money is probably one of the top 3 conferences in the country, and they have the 4th best defense in the Southeastern Conference. So Gamecocks are going to be in every single game the rest of the way unless the team just catches fire and nobody in the country would beat them. So enjoy the ride. This has been so much fun. I appreciate you guys joining me, guys and gals. So much is going on. We didn't talk about baseball. Baseball won, I guess, 4 out of 5 games this week. They got the series clinching win on Sunday against Belmont. The women's team, oh my gosh, like they're just still undefeated. They're so much fun to watch. They beat Kentucky by a lot of points on Sunday. You still have all these teams, softball, baseball, basketball, track and field is crushing it as well. So enjoy the ride as a Gamecock fan. I encourage you all to spend as much time as you can watching all the sports that are in season right now. Gamecocks got big news. There's going to be a soccer match, I guess a football match at Williams-Brice Stadium with Liverpool and Manchester United coming up on August 3rd. That's going to be a hot ticket. And then Gamecock soccer is still building and going to be great. There was a great interview today on Inside the Gamecocks with the soccer coach of South Carolina, and I would go back and listen to that. But so much to be excited about in Gamecock sports. The Gamecocks are going to take the court in men's basketball on Wednesday at Texas A&M. I know that all Gamecock fans' eyes will be glued to that, and let's see the Gamecocks can keep this magical run going. It's been so much fun. So I appreciate all of you for listening, and I say it every time. All of you give me the most valuable thing you have, which is your time. It's never not appreciated, and I appreciate all of you for giving me this platform and giving me this opportunity to spend time with you every Monday night on this show. And when I get to join Inside the Gamecocks throughout the week, it's so much fun. So I appreciate all of you. I hope you have a great night, and let's go Gamecocks on Wednesday. Talk to you later. Bye, y'all.